What do you want to say to our audience?
I would say something simple. If you want to get more out of life, it's the 5-minute rule every morning. Is just discipline yourself and create a habit that in the morning you're going to spend 5 minutes not looking at social media, just sitting there, whether that's in silence or, like I talked about, prayer, meditation, whatever you want to do, but 5 minutes, and just think about your day. And that way, as you're stepping into your day, you have a plan. And that way, at the end of your day, you can look back and either that just gives you a lot of acceleration into your next day, because that's how everything starts. It's just one step at a time. It's through those increments, and your habits may be crushing you, but you can turn that around, flip it on its head, and have just a 5-minute pep talk in the morning where you're just thinking about your day, and then you're putting that into action.
Here's the $1 million question. How do men like us reach our full potential, grow into the men we dream of being, while taking care of our responsibilities, working, being good husbands, fathers, and still take care of ourselves? Well, that's the big question. In this podcast, we'll help you answer those questions and more. My name is Brent, and welcome to the Fallible Man Podcast. Welcome to the Fallible Man Podcast, your home for all things man, husband, and father. Big shout out to the Fallible Nation and a warm welcome to our first-time listeners. My name is Brent, and today my guest is author and pilot Dominic Teich. Dominic, welcome to the Fallible Man Podcast.
Hey, Brent, thanks for having me on.
Now, Dominic, we like to start things off a little lighter around here with just a silly question. Google is the best place in the world for that, so I've got your silly question if you're ready.
I'm ready. Let's send it.
Okay. In South Dakota, it's illegal to fall down and sleep where? A, in a cheesecake factory, B, a city park, C, a rodeo ring, or D, gold mine?
I think I'm going to go with the cheese one. They're fond of their cheese up north, so I'm going to stick with the cheesecake factory. Don't fall asleep in there.
Okay. The answer is, we'll find out later. Don't pause and go ahead, guys. You know the rules. Just wait, make your guesses, and we'll get back to it if you guys still care later. Google is the greatest place in the world to find stupid, irrelevant questions to life, but it makes life fun, and it's a lot more fun to Google that than some other things. So why not? Now, Dom, I don't do big fancy introductions because that's just not really relevant to who you are at this moment. I can read accolades all day. That doesn't tell my audience who we're talking to. So in your own words, who is Dominic Teich?
Well, I am a recovering, I would say I'd had a spiritual reversion back to Christianity in October of 2020. And a father, husband. I've got 4 wonderful children. I own a couple of businesses. I like to fly airplanes, specifically the fast single seat style airplanes. And I'm a full-time fighter pilot in the United States Air Force. That's kind of the rundown.
All right. Now, see that I had, that was a question in the back of my mind, was I did not know from like our pre-interview if you were still active or if you were out officially at this point.
Yeah. So I'm a little bit different than probably what most people are used to hearing, but I'm in the reserves, but I'm a full-time reservist. So I'm on full-time orders, just like active duty members are. Okay. I do have the gloriousness to that is I have the option to not be full-time if I don't want to be once my orders run out, but I just keep re-upping my orders as I get to the end there. We moved 6 times in the first 10 years of being in the military and deployed twice. And we were gone. I mean, the assignment I was on before I even moved here to Phoenix, Arizona, we lived there a little over 3 years, and I was gone, I think, 22 of the months. So it just was really, really tough on any relationships, specifically my wife's. And then we started having kids, and then my kids didn't know me, and it became difficult coming home and just, who is this guy, and just kind of reintegrating and doing that over and over and over.
Yeah, it is a life you have to consider for sure as a military member. My brother was on fast attack subs, and he was out 9 months out of the year most of the time.
Could not imagine.
Yeah, he traded as he moved through his career, he kind of traded some of his assignments to try and get a normal, because it was the same thing. He'd go away and come back, and his kids didn't hardly know him, and it is a life of sacrifice to serve in the military. So thank you for that. But yeah, it's definitely it's rough coming from a lot of military friends over the years. I
Yep.
do not my wife's little brother just got out of the military recently, so we've been helping him reacclimatize to the world around him.
Yep. I hear it's a big shock.
It is. He's learning life is a little different. Even
Yep.
he's not quite a year out at this point, but
Okay.
he's still making some adjustments. It's like, oh,
Yeah. When it's not, I think the rigidity and the structure, when that goes away, when you go from all of that to nothing, right? And there's no scaffolding to your day, you can find yourself a little bit lost of like, well, nobody told me to do anything today, and I don't have to wake up or do anything. And you can kind of lose yourself if you're not self-driven or you don't have a plan or a process to get going.
okay. So, Dom, if you could have a conversation with anyone alive or dead, who would it be and why?
Jesus.
What's your second answer? Everybody says Jesus.
Everybody says Jesus.
Very
Okay.
valid answer, but
Yeah, valid answer.
You
Okay,
number
so
one
I think
answer.
so. Here's who I'd want to talk to is Saint Peter, and the reason being is the family and I have been watching the show The Chosen,
Okay.
and it has really humanized the personalities and the people behind Jesus, right? And so Jonathan Rumi, the actor of Jesus, and all of them, it really created this idea. So now when you read the Bible or you talk to somebody about Christianity or any of that kind of stuff, you can kind of humanize those people. So Saint Peter, and this is me, this is my pride getting in the way of my life. And so when I started watching The Chosen, the actor in that series that really bugged me was Peter. And on about the third episode, I sat back on the couch and went, oh my gosh, that's me. I do that. I would do that. And that the reason I didn't like him is because he was bugging me because of these little irks, and he's out there, right? And he's a little bit of a disaster. And Jesus works with that. And I'm the same way. I'm a go-getter. I'm going to be the one that, and if everybody's running off a cliff, I'll be the blue healer barking at all the sheep running off the cliff going, dude, there's a cliff coming up, right? And St. Peter's that way. And I think the good thing to know is when you start to learn about yourself, and if you can admit it, at least for me, it's usually kind of humbling, and I don't like to do it, but St. Peter is that guy for me. And when I went to my men's group and I told them, I'm like, guys, I have a confession to make. I was hardcore judging this character in the movie, and then I found out that like that's me. And what's funny is that a lot of them started laughing, and they go, when I started watching The Chosen and I saw his character traits, were like, that's Dom. I was like, so I think it'd be Peter. I just want to pick his brain and I think probably in his younger age, not after Jesus died, but before, just because I think that there would be a lot to learn in that time frame.
That's funny. Peter's always the disciple I identified with, just because he was so rash.
Yeah.
Peter was the one who was going to do the stupid if it was possible.
Yep.
Most of the time.
Yep.
It's like, totally get that. Yes.
Yeah.
Someone in the Bible. So yeah, no, that would be a good conversation for sure. Now, Dom, what purchase of $100 or less have you made in the last year that's had the biggest impact on your life?
Oh my goodness. Can we come back to that question in a minute? I just need to think about it. Okay.
We'll push forward. What are you most proud of?
So this question kind of trips me up, because are we supposed to be prideful?
There's a difference between being, I think, proud of things you've done in your life and being prideful to the point of sinful.
Yeah. Okay. So I think, can I break it up into two kind of separate things? So I from a personal standpoint, I love having a family and kids. It was something that I had to grow into, and it definitely put me out of my comfort zone and taught me a lot of things. So that I think from like a life perspective, I hope that my family can put up with me forever and be around, because that gives me a lot of joy. It is a lot of work, as you probably know. But from a personal or from a professional standpoint, I didn't take the normal path that most do to become a fighter pilot. And I worked really, really diligently for many years to even get accepted into those programs. And that's something that I still love to do. It still is, it's not like the first time ever, but I still love to strap a single seat fighter jet to my back and, light the rocket ship behind me and take off. And it's still really a lot of fun. So I think that I'm a rarity in the sense that a lot of men are probably locked into certain things in their lives that they maybe don't really want to do, but they're just kind of stuck. And like, praise God, I can do that on a daily basis. And yes, it's a lot of work, but it's also a lot of fun, a lot of exhilaration.
Okay. What is one random fact that people don't know about you? Just, it never comes up.
Random fact. A lot of people don't know that I grew up in a family band, and we traveled around, and I played bluegrass violin, and I got paid quite a bit of money as a young kid to go around and play in like old time fiddling competitions when I would win. But then Dad was a C-suite exec, so he knew people that would open up hotels, and we'd go play for the grand opening for a hotel, and we'd go up to Canada, and we'd go here and there. And I don't know, a lot of people find that out about me. I'm like, yeah, I played quite a bit of music growing up.
That's awesome. Okay. It's a very different upbringing.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I would be remiss if I didn't ask, because everybody's going to want to know at this point, what is it like screaming through the sky in a fighter jet?
So a lot of people like to have like the known to unknown. So because that's such an unknown world, I'm trying to think of something that, most people have done. And I would say a roller coaster doesn't quite do it justice, right? But it is, if you're sitting in a roller coaster and you're not all the way, buckled in, and you don't really have anything around you, that's kind of what it feels like in the F-16, is that there's a bubble canopy, and you can actually just look and see right over the edge of the jet. And there's, you put a control input in, and the computer tells the actuators and the servos in the jet what to do. So it's very smooth. So you move the control stick a 1/16 of an inch, and the jet will just roll right over for you. And it's very, very, very smooth. It's a very smooth airplane. I'm biased, obviously. I think the F-16 is one of the best fighter jets ever made. However, just being at, 30,000 feet and then just rolling the jet on its back and descending down to 300 feet, it's the world's best elevator ride you could have.
All right. I knew that would be a difficult question to put into relatable parameters.
Yeah.
I was in the Air Force for a short time, got injured and ended up out, but I would go over to, now I just went blank on the name. The base I had to go over for physical therapy after I got hurt was the home of the first fighter wing over in Florida. And so I would sit there after physical therapy waiting for someone from my detachment to come get me and just watch the pilots, right? Doing practice, touch and goes and all kinds of things. And like, it was the best show ever, just to sit there and watch all these planes up in the air that close. It was just so incredible to watch. So I see you guys up there flying. It's like, that's just, I've always just wanted to be able to just go for a ride. I just want to ride with somebody to see, because I love roller coasters. I love motorcycles. So it's just like, I want to go.
So I had just graduated from officer training in Alabama, and we went down to Eglin. I think Eglin Air Force Base is,
that's it.
Yep, probably what you're talking about. So there was an air show, but it was military only. So it was the day prior to the actual air show happening. Mm-hmm. And it was the first aerial demonstration ever of the F-22. And so we're standing there on the tarmac. We're newly minted Air Force officers. We have not, we know we're going to pilot training, but we still had to compete to become fighter pilots. It was a whole competition process all the way up through the end. And we're standing there, and all of us are just chomping at the bit. And a Vietnam era F4 flies up, over the airfield and goes into a brake turn. And we're like, oh, it's so cool. It's really loud. It's like a flying brick. And then an F-15 single seat C model flies up initial and they go into a brake turn. We're like, oh, that's even sweeter. And then an F-16 comes up initial and does that. And then the F-22 comes ripping up initial over the airfield, and his turn radius in that jet was like half of the tightest turn radius that we saw. And it was just, and then not only did he turn inside of all the other fighters, he then just put the jet on its tail and it climbed vertically. Just, oh, it was I still remember it to this day. It's giving me chills because it was so loud. It was so incredible. And it was just, you could almost hear like Metallica playing in the background and just like American flags are flying and the jet's just going straight vertical. And we're like, that's gotta be one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my life.
Oh yeah. I've seen the F-15s bank low right after they take off.
Yeah.
And the noise. Oh my.
Yeah.
Guys, if you've never heard this, like you literally at a close range, you can't, the rest of the world just fades out. It is so loud. There's just no sound.
Yeah. If you live close to any fighter base, you can actually go, and there's a lot of roads that you can go to, the perimeter roads around the base. They do it out here in Phoenix at Luke Air Force Base. And there's cars just stacked on the approach and departure ends, and you can watch the jets take off, 50 to 100 feet above your head. Bring some hearing protection because it's freaking loud. I've been out there and I'm even like, wow, I forget how loud it is. As a jet roars by you with about 40,000 pounds of thrust, just ripping right over the top of your car.
My dad and I used to go out and sit at the end of the runway at Whidbey Island Naval Base.
Oh, nice.
Because all the planes for the carriers when they weren't out, they were there. So we'd sit at the end of the runway and eat popsicles and just watch the planes go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Dom, what is something everyone should know about you before we dig into the show today?
Something everybody should know. So I need to go back to your other question of what I bought for $100. And I don't remember, Brent, can you remind me the phrasing of it? Was it the best thing I bought in a year, or best thing $100 bought? And
it's the most impactful purchase on your life of $100 or less than last year.
In the last year. So I bought, kind of geeky, I bought this my friend works for Ping, the golf club company, and he had given me there were these little connectors or something that went on the ends of my golf clubs, and it was I think it was $85 or something. I bought this little clip that goes in my pocket while I'm golfing, and instead of tracking anything myself, because we have so much digital technology nowadays, I can just golf, and it kind of takes a lot of the work out of golf and it makes it more fun. And then at the end of my round, I can see what I scored, what clubs I hit well, and it just kind of keeps track of all that data. I'm not a huge data geek, but it was the app and the little clip. I think it's called Arcos Golf Clip or whatever. If any golfers are listening to your show today, I really liked it. Some people don't like it, but that was something that I really enjoyed this last year. I'm just kind of keeping track of all my stuff and I don't have to do it manually anymore. Other thing that people, getting into your next question, that people should know about me, if I'm phrasing that correctly, but I would say a lot of fighter pilots don't write stories, and they don't, or they do, or they're really good storytellers, or they don't write stories, but fighter pilots just, I don't know, if you ever met one, you're probably not like, oh, that guy's an author. And I think that's probably something that's a little bit different in my case, is that I started getting my fighter pilot buddies to write short stories, and we started publishing them in compilation books. So the Single Seat Wisdom series books, they're just short little stories written by fighter pilots to kind of give back, right? And then that company, because I had started a couple of companies before this one, but that company is called Single Seat Mindset, because we're single seat fighter pilots. And that company we started, and then we give all of the money to a children's cancer nonprofit. So it's a little bit of a different structure. I feel like I've been given just so much goodness in my life. It's our way of giving back. We can give back through stories. A lot of fighter pilots want to publish their story, but they don't have the time or they don't know how. So this business kind of helps them along with that. And then we get the gratification of hearing people that read our stories, but also giving to a children's cancer nonprofit and helping families that have kids going through cancer treatments that maybe don't have the means or the funds or the insurance to do so.
That is awesome. I did not know that. I missed that somehow when I was researching. I didn't know the money was going there. So that is very cool. Now, guys, we spent just a little bit of time getting to know who Dominic Teich is. In the next part of the show, we're going to start diving into the first volume of Single Seat Wisdom and talk about that a little bit. We're going to roll to our sponsor, and we will be right back with more from Dom. How well do you sleep at night? Do you toss and turn and wake up more tired than when you went to bed? Sleep is commonly one of the critical elements people fall short on in their life. The quality of sleep you get directly affects your ability to control your weight, your ability to add muscle, your stress levels, and your everyday job and life performance. If you're ready to move to the next level, then sleep has to be part of the plan. Check out our friends at ghostbed.com if you're ready to get your best sleep. I love my ghost bed. I've been sleeping on one for a couple of years and has made a huge difference in how I sleep. Hit ghostbed.com and use the code TheFallibleMan30 to get 30% off your order and start getting better night's sleep tomorrow. Now, let's go on to the show. Welcome back, guys. In the first part of the show, we were just spending some time getting to know who Dominic Teich is and letting you meet him and understand where he's coming from. In this part of the show, we're going to dive into his book, Single Seat Wisdom, Volume 1. It's the first of a series that he's got going on. And he was telling us a little bit about it. It's kind of a compilation of stories of multiple pilots. Now, Dominic, what actually inspired you to start putting this together? Because you told us a little bit that, this is what you decided to do. What made you even think of doing this?
So during COVID, when COVID kicked off and all the lockdowns were happening, there was a class of fighter pilot students going through that was really struggling. Because as you can imagine, in any peak performing profession, sports, what have you, if you lose that social aspect, right? Which also, if you think about social distancing, even that phrase is confusing because either we're being social or I want to be distant, but I don't need them together. And it's even that was confusing to me. I'm like, don't tell me to be socially distant. Either I want to be at a distance or I want to be social. And so the class was having a tough time. And so what I started doing, because I was one of the student flight commanders at the time, I started sending the students just a short little message once a week that they could read in less than 2 minutes. And it was usually about something that I messed up as a young fighter pilot or that I messed up just in general, because I do make a lot of mistakes. So it was more of hey, just learn, you don't have to learn these lessons yourself. So, I started kind of recycling those. I saved it. And just like anything that I've done in business or with books or anything in life, I built a process behind that. So I started saving those little weekly, and it took on a bunch of different names. Now it's called the Competent Wingman. And people can actually read, if they go to our singleseatmindset.com website, the Competent Wingman program's on there. It's completely free, but it was designed for fighter pilots. And it was just short little stories that people could read. And in this case, it was the fighter pilot students that could read these messages and hopefully be a bigger version of themselves, be better, be helpful, that kind of stuff. Well, during that process, because I had built websites before, I built a website. And then I got really sick after the 5th or 6th class that came through of manually sending these emails out. And so that's where I automated it and put it into this program that people can use. And now pilot students from other bases are using it, and from even from other professions. I think one of the most unique reviews or messages that I got was from a guy in Minnesota. He worked at an air conditioning company and he was the floor manager and he wanted to be a pilot. And I don't know, it reached a lot of people. But during that time, I tell you all that because I had no intent of starting a website in another business and publishing books. I asked a couple of my fighter pilot buddies if they had a story and they wanted to publish it in a compilation type series. And it was more of a hobby when I first started it, and it kind of became something a lot bigger. And so that's why we decided to automate a lot of the things and make it a business for the tax implications, but also to keep all of our lines of communication clear and to keep our intent pure early on in the first couple of months. as much as I like to make money, we decided to give all the money to a children's cancer nonprofit. And, that's its own story, just why we even give to that children's cancer nonprofit. But the book became kind of this thing that was much more than a hobby. And then, of course, like anybody would do, you're like, well, I did it one time. Why don't we make this volume 1? Let me see if I can do it again. So then we wrote volume 2, and we are currently in the process of writing volume 3 right now. So I say all of that because it as I go along my journey in life, it usually just starts with that first step, just, committing to that one thing. And in my case, I feel like the world has been given to me. So I just kind of want to give back. Maybe it's a little bit of guilt. Like I've taken so much that I want to give back now, whatever it happens to be. And that's kind of where we're at now is a lot of people are like, oh, I read your book. And I'm like, well, I wish I could say that was my book and I wrote that. However, I literally just put all of the pieces together, compiled it, and edited it and paid for all of that stuff and got it to publishing. But it's all of our stories, all of our book together is what really made it happen.
See, I will admit that I was actually a little confused when you and I first connected on this. I thought you written the whole book, right? I thought this was your book. And then I started reading it. I'm like, wait, this is not what I was expecting.
Yep.
But it's got a lot of great stories. Now, one of the things I wanted to share with our audience today, guys, is this has a lot of relevant stories, and you don't have to be a pilot or in the military to garner knowledge from this. Okay. This is not just for a certain category of individual. There is useful information. These guys are just pouring their heart out, sharing knowledge they've gained. And so it's applicable to anybody. I want to be really clear about that. I was, when I first talked to you about it, I was like, okay, this should be interesting, how this is going to apply. And then I started reading it and it was like, oh, wow, there's just a lot of great applicable knowledge for like all different facets of lives. And you have it from a lot of different pilots. Like you're on book 3 now.
Yeah,
I knew you were on book 2.
Yep.
So you're on book 3 now.
We got book 2 published on Veterans Day last year, and this year is the big push is to get another one published on Veterans Day in November. And begrudgingly, I did not want to do a third book. It's a lot of work, as you can imagine, hurting a bunch of, well, one, all the fighter pilots monetarily contribute to the children's cancer nonprofit. So they send money to that to be part of this project. So not only am I asking them to give money, I'm asking them to do work. And as you can imagine, everybody's busy nowadays. These guys are working professionals, whether they're now retired flying for the airlines, or they're running their own business, or they are actually an active duty military pilot. It's a big ask, right? And so these guys are contributing in more ways than one. And it's a very difficult marketing message to say, hey, would you mind doing some work and, like, I don't know, writing a story, because I think it'd be cool. And fighter pilots don't do that. And then, oh, by the way, it's going to cost you money. But now we're, on our third book, and it was actually through another connection that I got referred to. He's like, yeah, I want to write a story. And so that kind of got book 3 going. And it took a lot of energy for me to get that book moving and to try to get this third book published. But I think it'll be a cool addition to the series. Again, like I said, we now have all the authors on board. Everybody's writing their chapters. So we're past the painful part, which is the initial part of getting everybody on board. But I'm excited to get it. The stories are coming in. And I even, when I read these stories initially, I sit back in my chair. Some of them even make me cry. There's some that I'm like, I've known you for a long time. I didn't know this about you type of stories.
Mm-hmm. I honestly like compilation stuff. Everybody thinks compilation things will be easier, but if you've ever worked with a large group of people, it's like herding cats, man.
Yeah.
It's just insane trying to get all these people who they're like, oh yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. The amount of follow-up phone calls and emails it takes to pull these things together is insane.
Yep. I experienced that. I send a short little writing guide, right? Just like anything in business and life, at work, with my family, it's a process, right? So everything you do, just plug it into your process so that next time you can just recycle that process, refine it. And so I send out this writing guide, and it's very clear what you're supposed to do. Who are like, if you were going to target a reader, this is the person. So I described the person, the word count and everything. And my good buddy, so you had mentioned you use your middle name, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my buddy in pilot training, he used his middle name. I didn't know for a year after him living with me and being my roommate. I didn't even know what his real name was. And I was like, your name is John? Well, so I emailed Jack. He writes his chapter, and it is, we go for about 800 to 1,500 word chapters. Even if you're not a reader, you can read these books very easily. You can digest these stories. You're not committed to anything because every chapter is so different. Well, he missed that little snippet in my writing guide about how many words he should write, and he wrote 9,000 words. He wrote essentially the equivalent of a third, if not a half, of the book in his chapter. And so what we ended up doing was just taking a snippet out of one of his life lessons and plugging that into volume 2 of the series. But we now have some unused stuff that I need to figure out where we can put that, whether that's in a different book series or another book, but that's for another time.
You can plug in story to 3.
Yeah.
Add 1 per book you release.
Yeah, exactly.
9,000 words is a lot, man.
Yeah.
People who don't write don't understand the commitment of writing that many words in a coherent fashion, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, anybody can scramble stuff. My daughters are 8 and 11, and they'll come in and see me typing up an outline for something or one of the projects I'm working on. And wow, you typed all that this afternoon? It's like, this is just the beginning of this document. You have, they're still at that age, but even as adults, a lot of people, we don't write very much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so they lose that. It's like, oh, well, people will try and I'm going to write a book, and they write like a chapter, and that's what they had to say. And they're like, how do people write these giant books?
Yeah.
You can say a lot in that amount of words, man.
Yeah. The short stories, that's kind of one of the things that we hone in on, because that's been some of our best feedback. Is just the other day, a young lieutenant who's new here at the base, she comes around the corner and she looks at me and she goes, wait, your Slice? And supposedly, as she was going through, she was becoming an officer, her grandfather bought Single Seat Wisdom Volume 1, gave it to her dad, and her dad gifted it to her. And so she had read the book, and I had met her in some capacity because she's one of the intelligence officers. So I had met her back in one of the briefing areas. And then the second time she comes up and she walks up and she's like, holy smokes, you're Slice? And I'm like, yeah. And she goes, oh my gosh, I've been reading your book. And I'm like, well, it's not my book. But what she said specifically, I told you that story because she said, the reason I like the book is because I don't have to commit to a whole book. And I can just read something, and in 10 minutes, I can pour myself my favorite drink, sit in my chair, and just in 10 minutes, I can read a story. I can set the book down, come back to it next year. I didn't miss anything. You can just pick it back up and go to the next chapter because it's completely different fighter pilot writing the story. It's a completely different message. And like you said, I appreciate the plug, but it was written to help all different aspects of life. So whether or not you're in business, you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to be a better employee, a better, there's even one called Fighter Pilot Fatherhood, right? And that chapter is all about a perspective that one of the fighter pilots got and how it helped him become a better dad and helped him level up there, and kind of give his little snippet on that.
It was, like I said, when I opened the book, it was not what I was expecting when we initially made contact. But you know what? I read chapters of this during like halftime of my daughter's basketball game.
Yeah.
My kids were both in basketball this last year, and I did. They cut to halftime. I'd be sitting there on the bleachers, pop out the book, read a chapter, put it down, back to the game. It was great because I could just pick it up anywhere, and just, it's a few minutes here, a few minutes there.
Yeah.
So it surprised me how much I enjoyed that part of it, to just be able to have that, because most time, right, I've got to get back into, I read a lot of books for this show, but I have to get back into, okay, I haven't picked this up for 3 days. What was that last chapter? I'm like
Yeah.
skimming a couple pages before my bookmark to get my brain back to where I was. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, no, there's a lot of great advice in there that you just, it's like, okay, you know what? I can take this one piece right now, and that's what I can do right now.
Yep.
And on
All
some
by
of them, you
design.
got to take the break. On some of them, you got to take that break, because a couple of the chapters, you're just like, you know what? I got to digest that before I can do anything else.
Yeah.
So I got to ask, because totally unrelated question. Since you mentioned your call sign is Slice,
Yep.
who assigns call signs? We've all seen Top Gun, but who assigns the call signs? Is that something
It's not the pilot themselves.
Well, that's what I guessed, but
Yeah. So imagine it, as a kid, did your buddies call you a name? There's some sort of naming among friends. I played a lot of baseball up through junior college, and everybody had their nickname essentially. The point being is, fighter pilots will generally, you'll go through all your training. You'll get kind of a stunt call sign when you're going through like basic training. Like we teach in the schoolhouse here, so a lot of the young fighter pilots, we'll give them a spoofer call sign. But then when they go to their first combat unit, they'll go through mission qualification training, and during that time, they'll do something stupid. And in my case, I did something stupid. So and that generally is how people get call signs. Whether or not it's a play on your last name, it could be an acronym that's actually a word. There's usually a story behind it. And mine was, I made a big mistake. I broke a training rule on a, for lack of better term, we were essentially dogfighting. So we're doing visual maneuvering, very dynamic, 3D, going up over the top. And I pointed at my instructor's jet too long, and we had a close pass. And they said I tried to slice him in half. So that was kind of there was more to the story, as there always is. I'm very grateful to have the call sign Slice, because I've been called a lot worse. So it kind of worked out in my favor, and it's not really a painful memory. It's something that I now can talk to with the young guys. And I think that's a lesson in life, is that you can take your failures and consider yourself a failure, or you can just go, that I failed at that event. I learned from it, and this is what I learned from it. And that's kind of my call sign, is when I'm now briefing the young guys, I'm like, hey, if you want a cool call sign like Slice, you will do this. If you don't want to die, do this. And that's what those training rules are for.
Okay. I had to, so we watch, I'm old enough that I'm a Top Gun fan anyway, but we watched the new one, and I was watching it with my daughters, but in the movies, they always have the really cool call sign, Viper and Phoenix, like, oh yeah, really BA, right? But I was watching the credits, and all the pilots that helped shoot the film, all had their call signs in there, and you're reading some of the call signs, it's like, they didn't choose that. So how did that happen, right? Because you're looking at a couple, I'm like, no one chooses that nickname. So I had to ask. I've never had a pilot just here where I could ask that question. So,
well, the backseater. So in the second Top Gun movie, one of my favorite scenes is when they're in the bar, and the backseaters, the weapon system operator, not a pilot. A lot of people don't know that, but the guy in the back seat is not a pilot, and he's in the bar. He's got his glasses. We're like, well, what's your call sign? And he just says Bob. And I just busted out laughing, because they're like, no. What's your actual call sign? He's like, I'm Bob. It's like, just I don't know, for me, a funny moment, just knowing everything that goes into call signs, and that guy got a call sign of Bob. I'm like, couldn't we have been a little bit more creative with that? But I guess that's part of the cinematography and part of being in Hollywood.
Right. Well, they had to, because with everybody else's call sign in that movie, that was incredibly funny, because you're just like,
yeah, it makes you think.
Yeah, everybody scratched their head at that moment. It's like,
yeah, okay,
we're talking to all these Phoenix and this guy and that guy, and you're like,
yeah,
Bob.
Maverick and Bob.
So I wanted to ask, since you were right here now, guys, we've been discussing single seat wisdom a little bit. with Dom. In this next part of the show, we're going to dive into the decision-making paradigm as fighters are trained. Because as you can imagine, right, life is moving pretty quick when you're flying that kind of plane. And so we're going to dig into that and how you can possibly apply that to your life for those moments where you're just pinned in and you're trying to make the best decisions possible. We'll be right back from our sponsor with more from Dom. Now, before we go any further, I wanted to share with you guys, I don't always tell you how much I love doing my podcast. Like, I passionately love what I'm doing. And one of the things that makes my life better as a podcaster is to work with a company like Grow Your Show. Grow Your Show is a one-stop podcast do-it-all. Now, I use Grow Your Show for my marketing, but Grow Your Show is literally a one-stop shop. You can record your episode and just drop it off with them, and they take it from there. It's amazing. If you are interested in picking up podcasting as a hobby, or maybe you're looking to expand your business and use podcasting in that aspect, talk to my friends over at Grow Your Show. Adam will take care of you. I guarantee it. I trust him. He's my friend. He's my business colleague, and I wouldn't trust anybody else with my show. Guys, welcome back. In the last part of the show, we were discussing, I won't say Dominic's book. I will say the book Dominic put together. Is that more correct?
That's fair.
Okay. Single Seed of Wisdom, Volume 1. He's actually working on Volume 3. Volume 2 is out. Now, in this part of the show, we're going to dive into his experience as a fighter pilot, because they have to be able to make critical decisions in extreme situations that most of us can't fathom. But I think it's a part of that decision-making paradigm can be really practical to our lives as men as we're faced with regular struggles. So, Dominic, I don't know if there's a streamlined way in which they teach you guys to do this, but I know at the speed in which you move in that plane, the decision window is very small. So how do you guys go about making the best choice possible in these scenarios?
So, I mean, that could go any number of different directions. However, the thing that I think a lot of people can learn from that is specifically that word. It's a learned process, and those two words are important. One, you have to be willing to learn, which means that you're probably going to fail quite a bit along the way. And then there's a process, meaning there's a syllabus, there's rules, and then there's essentially the blocking and tackling drills that you do on a daily basis as a pilot. And there's just some things that you need to do every time and you need to be good at. And so those are taught at early on in the programs, those are taught so that the base is set well. So I think there's no perfect syllabus, right? Because every syllabus needs to be tailored to every student because everybody learns a little bit differently. However, there are some learning modalities that are the same. I would say men, by and large, probably are very visual. So if we can make things visual and bring that to light, but really as an instructor, it's important to just relay that and figure out kind of where somebody's coming from and learn how they learn. And that way you can tailor their syllabus and what they're doing that day. So I think for me, like anybody can understand that, if you're a Major League Baseball player, you didn't start out there. You started out probably in T-ball, but really you started out with basic drills and you learned that stuff throughout time. Your brain is plastic, and you kind of essentially taught your brain over time how to hit a ball that was being thrown at 30 miles an hour, at 50, 60, 80, 90, and then over 100 miles an hour. So all those things were learned, but that didn't just happen accidentally. There was a process behind it. And I would say that, having been a civilian flight instructor, and that's where I started out, was in civilian flight instructing before I joined the military. And then now being a military instructor. So I've been a pilot instructor for over 20 years. This process that happens is usually driven by a syllabus. And I think that the way that that's applicable to business owners, entrepreneurs, employees, anybody else, is that when you start something new, if there isn't a process in place, you need to start building that, write everything down. And then as you go, you can start recycling that process. So for example, Single Seat Wisdom, I had to build the process while we were writing that first book. However, the second book was a little bit easier, and the third one's even easier just because the process is already in place. So it's a learned behavior. And then you need to have a process about what you're doing. If you wake up and if your alarm goes off in the morning and you just roll out of bed and you sprint to work and everything is an emergency, and you want to live your life that way, you're not going to get very far, because that's not a very process. There isn't something specific you're doing every day to grow and to get better.
Okay. So it really comes down to a practice how you play.
Yeah.
Play how you, what is that saying? Play how you practice. I'm saying that wrong somehow.
But have a plan.
Okay. So build a plan, build a process, and then practice that process over and over. Can I ask how many hours do you have to rack up before you can get, like, actually be combat certified? How many hours do you rack up in that seat?
So, I mean, you can be a civilian private pilot, and this is latent knowledge. I don't know what the minimum hours are, but I did not ever have a student become a civilian private pilot with the minimum hours. And if you did, I would be a little bit skeptical, right? I think it was 55 hours. Don't quote me on that. So you could have 55 hours of flight time of getting instruction, soloing the airplane, going cross country, going to other airfields, and you could be a certified private pilot. It was usually more like 65 to 90 hours. So less than 100 hours, you could be a civilian pilot here in America. And that's a pretty cool thing to know. Granted, flying is expensive because the airplanes and everything else is expensive. But if you get yourself to that phase, there were guys that when I was a civilian flight instructor that I'm just a grandpa and I just want to fly to see my grandkids and I don't want to have to drive. So they would go get their private pilot license and, they would retire and buy themselves a little airplane and they'd go fly to see their grandkids. I'm like, that's a really cool way to get around the country.
Right. But at your level, right, you are a combat pilot. You are a instructor in the United States military.
Yeah.
What kind of flight time are we talking about logging? Because you have practiced over and over and over and over to get to that point.
I mean, I personally have several thousand hours, but somebody that has, 200, 300, 400 hours, typically in the 500 to 1,000 hour phase is where I really found that I was comfortable in the jet, and I really wrapped my mind around the bigger parts of the mission, and I had seen enough, but there was, like, no pun intended, enough time in the seat to have seen all of that, right? Because even if you have, you can be a combat wingman and have 100 and something hours, but you haven't been around long enough to know what you don't know because you haven't seen it. However, that's not, I would say the hours, getting wrapped around the hours question is that there are guys that had 500 hours that were much better fighter pilots than I was at 500 hours. So it is a little bit individual, every person's ability to learn and their own capability to fly the airplane. Because think about this, if you had 500 hours in a fighter jet and then you went and did a staff job for 2 years, then you came back, your skills as a fighter pilot are going to atrophy quite a bit, and you're going to have to kind of get back on the horse and learn again and retrain your plastic brain. Now, granted, it's like riding a bike, it'll come back, but it'll take a little bit of time.
Right. But what I wanted to dig into with that question, guys, is the decisions they make when they're in the air, when they're flying. This is a process of going through their process, right? Going, as you said, going through that over and over again, right? You guys have processes for everything, right? You have, pre-flight inspections and check rides and all that stuff that I don't understand, right? You have a process for everything. Y'all have repeated that and repeated that and repeated that and trained that and trained that and trained that and ingrained these things to come together. So when you're faced with a question, when you're faced with a judgment call, when you're faced with a situation, you're falling back on time and experience and training and process over and over and over. And that, I think, is a big core, going back to what you were explaining, right? As you're teaching somebody to do something, this is how you need to learn to do it. This is how you figure out how they learn and go with it. But it's a culmination of that decision-making process of I practiced this over and over and over again. I've gone through this process over and over and over again. So you've removed a lot of the non-active decisions. Can I say it that way?
Yeah. Yeah. You've essentially moved from your prefrontal cortex, where you have to think about it, to your motor cortex and the back of your nugget that, like you're saying, is you're standing in the batter's box. I guarantee those Major League Baseball players, they're not thinking about how to swing the bat. It happens, right? And it's more fluid, and it's not mechanical. It just happens, right? It's not robotic, because you've learned that behavior. I think what you're getting at least in my case, is what habits in your life are serving you and which ones are dragging you down. And I think if you actually looked at those, you would find that many of your habits are dragging you down, and you're doing them subconsciously.
Now, Dominic, what are 3 actionable steps? So if guys want to get better at making good decisions,
Yep.
right? One of the things I've referenced before is Mark Zuckerberg. I'm not a huge fan of the guy, but in an interview, they asked him like just some oblivious question. And they asked him like, how do you pick your clothes in the day? And he said, I have 1 t-shirt. I have 1 set of jeans. I have like 60 of them, but I have 1 t-shirt. I have 1 set of jeans. He puts on the same exact clothes. I've heard other big CEOs say the same thing, right? I took away the unnecessary decisions that detract, right? Because you only have so many cycles in the day.
Sure.
For your brain to make good decisions. So what are 3 steps our listeners can take right now in their life to start being better at making decisions in their lives?
Sure. I would start out with the mantra that Box Johnson in Single Seat Wisdom Volume 2, the author that wrote the chapter Plan, Execute, Debrief. And this guy's a astronaut, fighter pilot, test pilot. I mean, he's big brains, but very simply, plan, execute, debrief. So what is your plan? And that you need to plan enough to get going. And so what I started doing many years ago was just waking up earlier. And if you're not a morning person, because most people aren't, just wake up 5 minutes earlier. And in that 5 minutes in the morning, whether or not you just sit in silence and sit still, or you pray or meditate or whatever you do in that 5 minutes, resist the urge to roll out of bed and then start sprinting through your day, because there's no intentionality behind that. So the plan would be, if you don't have any structure to your day and you're just starting out, plan on spending 5 minutes in the morning and then just pick one thing. So go, hey, today will be successful if X, whatever that happens to be. So you set your plan in the morning, and then during your day, you put your subconscious to that, and you put your active self to accomplishing that intentionality of your day. So as you're executing, you are paying attention to, hey, the goal today is to do this. And then at the end of the day, you debrief yourself. So did I do X, Y, or Z? Did it go down a different path? Should I stop doing that? And I think many times we'll find, at least I found, is that you need to fire yourself from doing things that aren't maybe best suited for you, or that maybe isn't best for your life. And because I was doing a lot of things, I was achieving a lot of things, and starting businesses and being a fighter pilot and doing all this stuff. And I found that it just created more busyness, but I wasn't in the correct business. And so I think part of that journey, part of that learning process, is kind of knowing thyself and figuring that out, and failing and then picking yourself back up again. But put your plan together either the night prior or the morning of, and think about that and go, hey, what is my intention today? And then during your day, as you're executing that, be cognizant of that. And then at the end of the day, debrief yourself. So those are some very simple things that you can do. And it really could be, my intention today is to spend 2 quality hours with my family. It could be as simple as that. Or it could be, my intention today is to reach out to 1 friend, or I need to get this 1 project done at work. Come hell or high water, I'm going to get it done. And then you just debrief yourself, and you're going to make a lot of mistakes. And at the end of the day, as you're debriefing, go, hey, what did I learn? Did it happen? Was it lucky? Did that happen just happenstance? Or did I do something to do that? Or did I fail? And then in that case, your failures, as painful as they are, they're going to be your lessons there. So I think just being cognizant of that and being present, and not looking at your cell phone in the morning, and staying off social media, and just going, what am I going to do today? Okay, today I'm not going to look at any social media or whatever. Those little subconscious habits, those things that you can cut out, those are really going to serve you a lot better. And it could be, I just need to stop eating this type of food. It's not that I need to eat healthier food. It just means I need to push this stuff out, or I need to stop doing this job at work because it's this person's job and I can give them feedback. So plan, execute, debrief is a very simple construct. And I would say you can call it the 5 minutes of freedom or whatever you want to call it in the morning. If you don't set that in the morning and you have an emergency as you're jumping out of bed and then you walk into work, your whole day is going to be an emergency. And you're not going to get anything done because there's no intentionality behind that. There's no plan. And then at the end of the day, when you're debriefing yourself, you're just going to throw your hands in the air and you're going to watch junk TV because you don't have any more gas in the tank.
All right. I think there's a lot of wisdom behind that. Now, Dom, you have Single Seat Wisdom Volume 3 in process. What's next for Dominic?
So I am in the process this year, specifically 2023, of not adding fuel to the fire. So we are in just maintain the businesses, be grateful for what we have. And I need to be, me personally, I need to be more present with everything that I'm doing. And so that takes a concerted effort on my part to not constantly be doing projects, to not be thinking about the next thing, and to actually just sit here and go, today, I'm just going to play cards with my kids, or I'm going to, and you probably are laughing because you've probably done the same thing, but I think that's part of the process, right? Is it's learning about yourself. And this year is, I'm actually in one of my businesses, I'm selling some property. I'm, using those funds to just simplify life and to kind of push and stop doing a lot of the stuff that creates kind of the thrash in life, knowing that there's going to be emergencies, fires that I have to put out. But this year specifically is I'm just refocusing and going, okay, if I was going to push one thing, just like I did at the beginning of the day, like in the next 5 years, what's the one thing that I'm going to push forward? And I haven't figured that out yet. So that's what this year's for.
I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing because a couple of years ago, I wouldn't have gotten that at all. Right. As a full-time corporate employee, I got it some, right? Because I was always pretty busy, but owning 2 businesses, and in the last couple of years, just the changes in my life because of that, and the change in your mindset as you start to own your own businesses and do things. Some people don't understand. It's like the drive to add that next thing. It's just so present, right? Yeah. I'm always thinking of that next, we'll do this. We'll do this, right? Yeah. And the amount of time I actually had to step back recently and remove some stuff from the cycle. It's like, you know what? I like this, but it's not serving its purpose. It's not, no matter how badly I want it to, it's not actually delivering value for the time I'm investing in it. Yeah. And so I actually scrubbed a thing I do fairly regularly recently. And that was very painful for me because it's like, I really wanted that to be good and to work really well, and like just time on the return on investment. So it's a different mindset sometimes, but some people don't understand because they're just not at that same space. It's like, yeah, that's really hard for entrepreneurs and businessmen who are expanding to go, no, we're not going to push farther this year. We're just going to consolidate and do better, not try and expand more, not try to add more things. Yeah. So I was laughing because I'm on that cycle of nope, we're not anymore.
You could, or you could remove everything and start something else. But I think, the lesson here is more does not mean more. It could just mean thrash, and it could just rip you apart, especially if you're not doing the right thing. And in my case, I turned off a business that was profitable, but it was about the profits. And if you're solely focused on money, I don't have, you'll roll out of bed for the first 6 months, but then something will really get on your nerves. And if it's only about money, that's not a long-term thing that's going to work. right? Because you're not going to find that, all these fires pop up throughout my day. I can actually roll out of bed and attack these things with the right mindset if it's only about money.
Yeah. There's got to be more to it. I was actually just speaking at a podcast venue about that. It's like your podcast has got to be deeper than that, man. It can't just be about money. You gotta have your heart behind it, or you're just gonna burn out so quick.
Yep.
Now, Dominic, where is the best place for people to connect with you?
Singleseatmindset.com.
Now, for those of you catching us on the video, I've got that up on the screen. There, I'll scroll to the right point so you can see the page. Oh, that's not even that's the home page. I'm sorry. I am all over the place today, guys. Sorry about that. Just not together. Oh no. Guys, it's a cool website just because he's got some really great footage that you're going to enjoy anyways to lead off. That's a really strong anchor for the website, by the way. Well done in that. But singleseatmindset.com. Dominic also has a lot of social media presence. Of course, as always, we'll have all that for you guys down in the show notes or the YouTube description, whatever platform you're enjoying this on. Now, at the beginning of the show, Dom, we asked you, in South Dakota, it's illegal to fall down and sleep where? It's a cheese factory. Better read that right. B, a city park. And you see where my head's at. I want cheesecake now. C, a rodeo ring, or D, in a gold mine. You said in a cheese factory. You are, in fact, correct. I had no idea that South Dakota was big into cheese. My brain went, it's not Wisconsin. It can't be that. So in case you guys still care, that's the answer. It's apparently in South Dakota, I love stupid laws in random states that they just haven't taken off the books. It's illegal to fall down and sleep in a cheese factory. So if you guys are visiting South Dakota, don't do that. They will apparently dislike that. Now, Dom, for us to wrap up today, I would like you to share what is the most important takeaway you want someone to hear today from this show. If they missed everything else, what do you want to say to our audience?
I would say something simple. If you want to get more out of life, it's the 5-minute rule every morning. Is just discipline yourself and create a habit that in the morning you're going to spend 5 minutes not looking at social media, just sitting there, whether that's in silence or, like I talked about, prayer, meditation, whatever you want to do, but 5 minutes, and just think about your day. And that way, as you're stepping into your day, you have a plan. And that way, at the end of your day, you can look back and either that just gives you a lot of acceleration into your next day, because that's how everything starts. It's just one step at a time. It's through those increments, and your habits may be crushing you, but you can turn that around, flip it on its head, and have just a 5-minute, 5-minute pep talk in the morning where you're just thinking about your day, and then you're putting that into action.
Guys, that is all for our interview with Dominic Teich. I will have all of his connection info. As always, be better tomorrow because of what you do today, and we'll see you on the next one.
This has been the Fallible Man Podcast, your home for everything man, husband, and father. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a show. Head over to www.thefallibleman.com for more content and get your own Fallible Man gear.